Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Prevails, an alternate accounts story. Today I'll be covering the second week's worth of matches in our first Grand Arena Championship, and I know it's pretty dang late for this batch of videos, but this is my alternate account. It's at the 1.7 to 1.8 million GP mark, and if I'm being completely honest, it's not going to be as much of a priority as my main account because my main account is, in my opinion, much more interesting. However, I know that there are a lot of people who play at or near this level, and I wanted to be able to provide an alternate look at Grand Arena and kind of some things to look at. Maybe suggest a few teams for you to work on in this mode, because there are certain teams that work really well here that are kind of unseen at the higher levels. And I'm not saying that the characters I'm using are completely off meta or anything. That's not actually accurate, but there are certainly quite a few characters that are more relevant now, and those characters will eventually find their way to other teams at the higher levels, but you kind of just have to mix and match and work with what you've got. You have to be efficient, you have to select your teams well, and frankly, even more important than that is understanding what the limitations and strengths of each team that you're going to use are. So moving into this round, my opponent obviously doesn't really have a clue about what team's composition should look like in some ways. I mean, you can tell that they place defenses on purpose, intentionally, but there's a lot of really weird things that are going on here. So we're just going to go in and face this Raid Han lead team, which is completely bogus because it's not actually a leader. So you're not getting any kind of leadership bonus for that. And I picked Bastila here because she gives her entire team plus 150% protection, and that's honestly all you really need. This is such a hodgepodge team. The very first threat you want to take out is Bastila Shan Fallen. She does a ton of damage. She is completely ridiculous on pretty much any team. She's kind of wasted on this team. She should probably be with Sith, but even still, you want to take care of her because she has that reverse battle meditation, or dark battle meditation, or whatever you want to call it. So that was it really messes with you because you can't give debuffs, and a lot of teams really rely on debuffs, and so you just want to kind of avoid that. Just as a side note, my opponent really should have just used Boba as the lead, because Boba has a universal leadership and would have especially helped against me. Well, maybe not against me specifically, but it would have given the entire team more damage. It would have helped all the diff scoundrels and everything. That would have been a better choice, but my opponent is clearly just not as experienced with this game yet, and that is just fine with me because I like to win. I don't know, that sounds kind of messed up, but at this level, you're just gonna get a mixed bag. Like, as you'll see, as we progress through this series, there's actually quite a few really strong defensive teams and a lot of players who really do know what they're doing. And so, I don't mean to disparage this entire level. I don't think that it's categorically incompetent. I just think that my opponent this time is. So generally speaking, in this game mode, you're going to have like one good meta team that can hopefully counter all of the other teams out there, and that's what we're looking at here. I have my Commander Luke team. They can counter every conceivable team right now. I mean, they'll really struggle against like a good Darth Revan team, and they'll even struggle sometimes against Jedi Revan. As you can see, I decided not to take out my opponent's Jedi Revan. I recognized early on that my opponent had put basically every single good character that they had on defense, and that meant that they weren't going to be attacking me, which meant I wasn't going to get a full clear, but that I would be able to get the win at the very least. And so It's kind of a sad thing. I've reached an era where I can't really full clear every single opponent of mine now in Grand Arena at this level, and that's kind of a departure from the norm. In the past, I've been able to full clear a lot. I mean, pretty much every time. But people are starting to just really stack their defenses. It's a very strange place to be in, and so I am just kind of trying to adapt. You have to look at your opponent's roster and just see what kind of teams they have available. And, it's really pretty easy. You just look at like the first 3 rows and see what their good characters are, what the things that they've invested gear in, and then you can see their first 3 teams. You can see like the majority of the characters on those top rows, and if you see all of those characters, you know that you are probably going to get the win just because they won't be able to attack you. Now that does mean you need to set a credible defense up, but that isn't necessarily a problem because a lot of times we're doing the same things that I'm just telling you that our opponents are doing that's annoying. So I'll show you guys my defense in a little bit. I think that's on this video. So I managed to win that one with Ewoks, and I got an undersized win, and that's as far as I could go. I couldn't go any farther because my opponent had a really strong Jedi Knight Revan, and I did not believe that my ability to beat that particular Jedi Revan squad was going to be worthwhile with Commander Luke, so I just kind of bypassed it, and I was right to do that because I ended up winning. And now we're on to our next match, which is another interesting set of choices. Like you can see, they have KRU and First Order, and that's great. And then they have a Zeta on Phasma, which is one of the worst Zetas in the game right now, especially because you can't run 2 First Order teams. There's not enough characters, and Phasma's lead is just categorically worse in every way than Kylo Ren. So you always want to use Kylo Ren unmasked. Now, one interesting principle in this game is that Ewoks at any level are going to be able to counter First Order at a similar level. Like, you can't counter First Order if they're like gear 11 and your Ewoks are only, gear 7 or something like that. That's not how it works, but you can absolutely counter gear 10 First Order with your own gear 10 Ewoks. And that's occurred quite a few times already. Now, one team I really want to recommend is working on Ewoks, because not only are they a pretty solid offensive team for you, and they can be solid on defense as well in certain circumstances, but not only are they good on offense, but then they're also going to get you the extremely vital characters C-3PO, and 3PO is always going to find a home. I want to use C-3PO on like 7 different teams, and you can only use him on 1, obviously, but he's an incredibly good character. You want to get him. So Ewoks, however, they're also like at gear 11, like where they're at right now. I think these guys are all gear 9 or 10, something like that. Maybe some of them are 11 at this point, but once you start getting up to like gear 12 or even gear 13, once you hit gear 13 and start putting some good mods on them, like they start beating meta teams pretty consistently. And you can see the Ewok Discord, it always talks about these random teams that they can beat, but it's really interesting to watch. Ewoks are kind of a sleeper unit in this game. People don't necessarily take Ewoks for anything. They don't take them seriously, and I think that that's a mistake. Like, they're not the very best team out there, but they're good all the way through endgame. Like, they are solid if you want to invest in them. And I think usually people want to invest in other things that are a little more flashy and don't involve like teddy bears killing things, and I get that too. And so I was able to take out that First Order team, even though they had their Zeta and everything on KRU. And in the back is a really weak Phoenix squad, because everyone is Phoenix, and everyone knows that Phoenix are amazing on defense, right? I mean, they're stalwarts. Everyone used to have a Phoenix zone. I remember in Territory Wars back in the day, like everyone used to have Phoenix because Phoenix weren't good on offense, they're good on defense, and that's actually false. If you want to build a really strong team, like Phoenix are really good on offense, like especially once you invest in their Zetas and their gear and everything. I mean, it is hard to stomach uh, all of those pieces of gear. They are perversely difficult to gear. Phoenix are not fun to gear at all, but if you can actually stomach that, then you'll end up being rewarded with a team that can take out, I don't know, mid-tier teams. Like the Phoenix aren't nearly as useful as Ewoks are, unfortunately, but the one thing that they do have is excellent ships. Like they have really strong ships, and currently that's the meta, is the Millennium Falcon meta. That'll change here eventually once people start getting a negotiator unlocked and everything, but until then we absolutely do have a meta team in the form of the Millennium Falcon and Rebels, and the Phoenix are right there in the middle of it. Like they have some of the most important ships in that regard. And so on my alt, I actually have Ezra at gear 11, I have Sabine at gear 11, and Chopper at gear 10, so that I can use their shared ship, the Phantom. And I don't really have Hera and Zeb and Kanan super well geared, because Kanan and Zeb require the exact same gear all the way through gear 12, and the gear they need is extremely obnoxious. It is so ridiculous. So one thing I want to point out here that I'm doing is I'm just killing zombie over and over and over again, because I want to get a bunch of points for something, and that's totally fine. It's because I wanted to use Galactic Republic to kill units. You need to kill like 24 guys with Galactic Republic characters, and so I was just letting Yoda destroy them, and I stopped recording because it was just taking a really long time. But that's one way to get feat done, is if you attack Night Sisters with the right team, you can just kill zombie a million times in a row and get that feat in one try. So then you don't have to try to continually beat guys with that same criteria. And so Yoda did end up killing zombie like 20 times or something, and then I think I was about to time out, so I finished off Spirit and then zombie. Over here you can see I have a really weak Night Sisters team. They're all like gear 8, maybe Asajj is gear 9 or something like that, and they're still really strong. I put a Zeta on Asajj just to make that team stronger, and they can really beat a lot of teams. Like they can beat a lot of teams on when they're on offense. They can punch above their weight consistently, and that's really what you're looking for in Grand Arena. Like you want those teams that are super efficient, that can counter a lot of random teams, especially at this level where you're not really facing a huge amount of adversity in terms of like several meta teams. People typically will keep their arena team on offense, and so you're just dealing with all these B teams. And Night Sisters are a great way to kind of take advantage of that. And not to mention, like if you start farming Mother Talzin early on, pretty soon, like in a few months, you're going to be able to start getting more Zetas every month. You get 2 to 4, and realistically it's just 2. I think I got 3 one time, and I've seen someone else get 3 one time, and so it's not really a range. It's you get 2 with a chance at a bonus, kind of. So anyways, you can see here I saved my Commander Luke team thinking maybe my opponent had left anything good in the back, and they hadn't, and so I got 62 banners and an undersized win, which is always nice. And I was able to full clear this opponent because they left absolute garbage, and I don't even know if they attacked me. I apparently did a terrible job of taking screenshots during this round. I think other rounds I did a little bit better of screenshots on my own teams, but this is the finals, and my opponent has Geonosians, which is pretty unexpected, and they're all gear 12. Like, that's a serious level of investment at this level. Like, you really have to want that Geonosian team. And they also put an Emperor Palpatine team in there. They put a lot on defense, and I had to kind of think about this for a minute because I wasn't really sure which team my Commander Luke should counter. Like, he could beat Geonosians and he can beat Emperor Palpatine, but obviously you can't beat both, and so I had to use my second strongest offensive team on the other one. And so I ended up just taking my Bastila squad with Yoda, and my hope was that I'd be able to get tenacity off with Yoda first. And so I checked all the speeds, and Yoda was the fastest, and he was able to get tenacity up on everyone, after which case, like, it was relatively easy because this Emperor Palpatine team relies entirely on being able to debuff you, and if they can't debuff you, their damage is pretty lackluster. They don't get any kind of turn meter or anything. They're just kind of at your mercy. And so you can see I'm using Grandmaster Yoda here to reduce turn meter on guys with his special. That's why I'm kind of hopping around with him. Not that you have much choice with Yoda. You get either hopping, or I guess there's like levitating Yoda, or he's riding in that little hover chair thing in episode 1 or 2. I don't know, one of the prequel movies he's hovering. So I guess he's also hovering in episode 5 if we're being technical, because Luke is helping him hover with the Force. Anyways, I'm totally digressing here because this match was relatively boring once I was able to get tenacity off. And that's something to think about. Like, whenever you're going to face Empire or Sith in general, you're going to want a way to deal with debuffs. And it's not just dispelling debuffs, because against Emperor Palpatine, that actually really helps them. That feeds their turn meter, and you don't want that. You want to just prevent debuffs from the start, which usually means tenacity down, or if you have Bastila lead Zetaed, which I don't, but if you did, then you would just be able to resist a lot of that stuff inherently, because you have a ton of tenacity bonus from her lead. Once again, we have Ewoks hanging out. I had heard about this matchup. I don't think I've ever actually tried Ewoks against Bosk lead. Like, this Bosk lead was not super intimidating, but neither are my Ewoks, and so it's kind of a fun opportunity to be able to try this team out. As I said, like, you need to pick a few solid teams for offense and just kind of stick with them, because otherwise if you get involved in too many teams, you're really going to struggle to gear everyone and get everyone done. And if you hyper gear all of your teams, like, you get all the gear that those, you get them all up to like gear 13, and now we have relics and stuff. If you do that, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage, because a team can only be in one place at a time. And so you put them on defense, great. If your opponents have a counter to it, then you've wasted a huge amount of resources for nothing. Like, these Geonosians are a huge pain in the butt to gear and get ready, and my opponent put gear 12 on all of them at this level. It's a huge investment. So and Commander Luke just kind of counters them, as you'll see here. So you can see that I stunned the Brood Alpha first, because he has a cleanse, which will get rid of all of their dispels, and it will get rid of all of their debuffs, and that's something you really don't want. So after that, you use Commander Luke to get buff immunity onto the Geo Brute so that he can't taunt, and then you just shoot their really weak guys. Like, you shoot Soldier if you can, you shoot Poggle isn't actually a great target because he has 25% evasion, so you're going to miss quite a few shots. If you can target Spy, that'll be great. Target target soldier or spy if you can, and if you can't, you can always target the alpha. The alpha is not going to be someone you can take out super easily, but if you can, then all of the linking stuff goes away, and they stop being able to actually do the hive mind, and then you can just kind of pick them off like fish in a barrel at your leisure. I've kind of stopped going in that direction of trying to hit the brute alpha first, just because he has such a huge health pool, and it works. I mean, it's better to just try to kill one member at a time on the periphery than just bang your head against the alpha until he finally folds, in my opinion. That way, at least you're making progress. Even if you lose, you still have a couple characters dead, and maybe you can counter it with another squad you have in reserve. Alright, so we're using Phoenix here to counter whatever's in this zone. I think it was something fairly weak. My opponent was obviously not anticipating that I'd be able to clear their front zone, and that's always fun to see, just these garbage teams on defense. And Phoenix, again, like, everyone's got a Phoenix team because everyone needs Phoenix for a lot of different reasons. You know, you can unlock Thrawn with them, or you have to unlock Thrawn with them. You don't have any other choice. You also unlock Emperor Palpatine with them. You unlock the Chimera, which is a really strong ship. So you do a lot of things with Phoenix. So everyone's got a Phoenix team, and no one's really sure what to do with them. So they just throw them on defense because it's a pain to pick your defensive teams. And I would kind of advise against that, because you can see my Phoenix. You know, I don't actually know how this ends. I know that at one point I actually did lose with my Phoenix. That might have even been last season, but the Phoenix are not invincible on offense, but they are very strong on offense. Like, they've got a lot of really strong things that they do well here. They heal, they're resilient, they can build up to be a lot of DPS. Like, Sabine's armor shred is fantastic for that. Like, you can just tear through certain tanks after a while. So even though it looks like I'm making like no actual discernible difference, you can see that I got enough stacks of armor shred on Chopper that he just like disintegrated finally. And now they're starting to drop like flies. As you kill each Phoenix member, they lose certain abilities that they had been sharing, because that character is no longer there to share with them. And so all you have to do, you just want to kind of skate through and be patient, get armor shred as much as you can, and eventually things are going to work out. The stars will align and you'll get the win. And so one thing that I've noticed at this level is that banners don't matter nearly as much as just wins. If you can get a win, then you're good to go. And so you can see here I have full cleared except for this last zone. There are 3 gear 1s in there, but there are a couple of guys who are like level 70 or something. And so I need to make sure that I get the win here on the first try. So I actually took the full Night Sister squad -1 so that I could get an undersized win. But you know, like I said, I wasn't worried about the banners themselves, but this is kind of a sneaky thing. Like, they were hidden in the middle there, so that my opponent was probably like kind of half hoping that I would just send in one really weak character to do an AoE, and like Asajj alone there would probably not have beat Zalbar in mission on her own. And so you kind of want to be careful looking for those tricks. Your opponents are tricky at times. Alright, so it looks like I don't actually have pictures of my different defenses, so I'll tell you about them for a second. I have a Zeta Emperor Palpatine squad with Darth Vader and KRU and Dark Badstila and Tarkin, I believe, who was gear 8. And I just used that squad because it's easy to get Emperor Palpatine up to gear 11, and putting a Zeta on him makes that squad entirely too hard at this level to counter. Like, if you can get some speed on Vader, that team very seldom dies, and when it does, my opponents usually aren't able to clear my other zone. So that's the squad. Behind Palpatine, I do have a Gear 8 Kira team, which has never lost on defense at any point. They just defend because it's such an annoying team, even at Gear 8. And at this level, people don't comprehend that a bunch of characters they've never seen can actually be good and have synergy. And so the Kira team is just there because I needed another team, and they're all just Gear 8. In the other zone, I have Bosk lead with a bunch of Gear 12 bounty hunters, and that team is just resilient. They're not anything too special. Most people can kill them if they want to, but they need to use their meta team. Usually people don't have a team strong enough to take out my Gear 12 bounty hunters, and I do have some pretty good mods on them. And then the final squad in the back is really not a very kind one. It's General Grievous at Gear 13, and with a bunch of like Gear 9 and 10 droids. And basically, I mean, my opponents might be able to attrition him down, but I don't know that anyone can really take out General Grievous with anything but a meta team. And sure, you can use your Jedi Knight Revan to counter him, but then what are you going to use to counter a Zeta Emperor Palpatine and a Zeta Bosk bounty hunters? So I've kind of spread my Zetas out a little bit with this alt character, but that's just because I want to have a really strong and versatile defense. Finally, in the very back zone, I have it's not a complete throwaway squad, but it's not strong. It's Admiral Akbar with Stormtrooper Han and Princess Leia and Biggs. Biggs is Gear 11, the rest are Gear 8 or 9. And then finally it has Gear 8 Nest in it, Enfys Nest. And that squad is just kind of annoying in the back, and a lot of times people struggle to deal with Enfys Nest even at Gear 8. So that squad is not a dependable one. People do beat it occasionally, but for the most part, that clearly didn't happen in this round of Grand Arena, and typically people don't even get to see that that's a squad in the back. So there you have it, folks. Another finals win for my alt. And next week is a lot more difficult. I'm paired with a lot of stronger players, and I actually end up making an enormous blunder, and it's pretty interesting in my opinion. So I'll stay tuned for that. I will be putting that out eventually. I don't know exactly when that will be, but it will hopefully be before the next Grand Arena season starts. This has been a really great Grand Arena so far. We've got one match left as of this recording, so we are getting close to the end, even as this only records up to the halfway point. So thank you guys so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails, even with his alt.